Hello everybody and welcome to part 13 of Kerbal Space Program, The Journey Continues. Now, just before we get started, a quick note because you might have noticed there's been a bit of a change in the audio quality. We've moved into our new house and I'm now recording in a dedicated study rather than just in the spare bedroom, which is an improvement, but the study is quite small, there's not a lot in it at the moment, and so yeah, it's quite echoey. There's a lot of reverb in the audio recording at the moment. I have been taking various steps to try and minimise it, and it's nowhere near as bad as it was, but still far from ideal, so my apologies for that. I will try and get that sorted as soon as I possibly can. Anyway, with that out of the way, it's time to get cracking. We join our interplanetary craft, the Ptolemy, in orbit around Juno's moon Ike. Its crew of Kerdard, Bargel, Johnny and Donfort Kerman are poised and ready to hoover up as much science from this moon as is humanly possible. Or, in this case, Kerbally possible? We're in orbit about 250,000 metres above the surface of Ike. I did consider dropping our orbit down for the first science sweep, just to get ourselves going around the planet a little quicker, make that first sweep go faster, but in the end I decided I'm going to keep this to as few manoeuvres as is possible, just to conserve what fuel we have. We're not desperately short of Delta V or anything like that, but it does give us a little extra flexibility on the journey back home to Kerbin. First things first then, we crack open our science bay, take readings from all of our experiments, and then transfer that data across to our 2 experiment storage containers. We have the magnetometer, the materials lab, the 2 mystery goo containers, we have the barometer, the thermometer, and of course the negative gravioli detector, which if you've watched my previous videos you'll know we'll be using quite a lot. Having done that then, we start on our gravity sweep around the planet. The negative gravioli detector is biome specific even in space high, and we want to get readings from all 6 of the biomes we'll encounter on our current orbit. We take all those readings and then there's just a couple more things for us to do just to finish off that first sweep. We take a crew report, we get Johnny out, we get him to take an EVA report, and then he's going to take those 2 bits of data across to the experiment storage container, resetting the experiments that need resetting as he goes. With his tasks complete, Johnny makes his way back aboard the Ptolemy, and with that our first sweep is done, which means we've gained all the science we are going to gain whilst we are in space high above this moon. It is now time to make the switch to in space low. For Ike, the boundary is 50 kilometres in altitude, but I have a bit of a dilemma when it comes to working out exactly what orbit I want us to end up in. We're going to be doing a landing a little later, and from that perspective we want to get quite low so we don't put any unnecessary strain on the delta V of the lander, but also we don't want to go too low because that would put unnecessary strain on the delta V of the Ptolemy when we come to do later manoeuvres. In the end I settle for an orbit at about 30,000 metres, and with our orbit lowered we can begin our second sweep. Once again we start by taking readings from all of our instruments and then proceed to start our gravity sweep of the planet, picking up those same 6 biomes, of course this time in space low. With all that done and dusted, we once again get Johnny out to perform his duties, but this time I noticed something I'd kind of forgotten, and that's that EVA reports in space low are biome specific, so of course we want to pick up all of those if we can, so it's time for us to make another sweep round the planet, just stopping every so often, popping Johnny out, getting another report and popping him back aboard again. So having completed 1 extra orbit than we were initially anticipating, and having stowed all that data safely aboard the relevant containers, we have gained as much science as we are going to gain whilst we're up here in orbit, so it's time for us to get a little bit more up close and personal with Ike. Kerdard Kerman will be leading our first mission down to the surface, so she transfers across to the lander, along with our engineer Bargel and our scientist Johnny. Having said farewell for now to Donfort Kerman, who can stretch his legs out a bit now, our 3 Kerbals detach the lander and then start to make their way down towards the surface of Ike. To begin with, we lower the orbit down to 10 kilometres, just to give us a good altitude from which to perform our deorbit burn, and, well, because this is the first time down to the surface of a new planetoid, I thought we'd switch over to the live commentary for this. Right then, so first things first, I think we need to pick ourselves a landing spot. Let's bring up the map view. Obviously we want to come down on the day side, everything's looking pretty rocky over here, bit of a crater there. I try to land somewhere that's a bit low, like in the basin of a crater, because then then at least you can sort of be guaranteed of landing somewhere pretty flat. Where are we? Now, most of the time on planets you find that the darker the area, the lower the elevation, but with this sort of this medium grey kind of area, that doesn't seem to be the case. But I think for this little bit, I think that darker colour does indicate a lower altitude. So I'm going to try and set her down sort of in there. We go sort of right by the edge of that, but I think we should be able to land ourselves in there. Ideally, if I'm landing there, I probably should have started burning a little earlier, just to make the descent a little bit more fuel efficient, but it is what it is. Maybe burnt a little bit. No, I was about to just adjust that with RCS, but that's not having much of an effect. We'll just we'll go for that, and we'll see what we end up with. I'm going to start time accelerating here. That ridge there, I mean, we're miles above it, but you know, just whenever you're coming down on an approach, you always get a bit nervous, and I am a bit nervous about this. We're landing on a brand new planetoid for the first time. Only the fourth time in this series or the last series we're landing on a new planetoid, which yeah, we really need to get ourselves in gear and start knocking a few of those off. But we'll have to wait till all our various expeditions are back from their explorations. We've got the Galileo around Eve. We've got obviously the Ptolemy currently around Ike, and we've got our probe around Joule. And all those launch windows back, they happen in very quick succession. Not all of them are the optimal launch windows back, but yeah, I think, as I said, only the fourth new planetoid we need to get a shift on. So I imagine that will feature in the next episode. How are we doing? Our impact indicator has come up. It's not that reliable. We're coming over some quite nice flat ground here. I think it raises up on a bit of a ridge and then comes down over there. So I'm going to start burning here. We've got quite a lot of horizontal velocity, so that means that impact indicator isn't always as reliable as it could be. I'm going to put down the landing gear. I'm going to quickly retract the solar panels. I don't envisage many problems, but better to be safe than sorry, you know? So here we go. As I said, for only our fourth new planet in all of these two series. It's coming down nicely. Just ease off on the throttle a little bit. Take that right down. Looking good. Looking at terrain altitude. Yeah, looking good. Here we go. Coming down on a bit of a slope. Doesn't look too bad though. I reckon it should be alright. Want to hit it at about 3 meters per second, I reckon. There we go. Oh. Keep it together, keep it together. Are we good? I think we're good, and we are down. Let's start seeing about collecting some of that science and getting those Kerbals out. We will want a crew report quickly before I forget. Let's keep that. And now our mission commander, Kerdard Kerman, can make her way down to the surface of Ike. Down the deployable ladder. And onto Ike's harsh grey soil? I have no idea if this is probably some kind of moon dust. There you go. Have a quick jump. Yeah, there's not a lot of gravity on Ike. It looks like it might be lower than the Kerbin's moon, but I can't be sure. You do an EVA report. Good stuff. And of course, we will want to plant a flag. So this is the Ike Midlands. In keeping with my my site naming, my incredibly boring site naming convention, plaque text, I think in homage to the episode of Scott Manley's Interstellar series he did. I'm going to call this one We Still Like Ike. And there we go. Let's start getting those other Kerbals down. Oh, bit of clipping there, and that's taking us to the flag. Bit of camera clipping there. You can see below the surface of Ike. You do occasionally get little visual glitches like that in KSP, especially if the camera's sort of over here looking down like that. And that's Bargel down. You can go and join Kerdard. You have a little bit of a jump as well. See if you can land this one. Yeah, we're 2 for 2. And finally, because we're going to want to take some science, and if we want to take some science on this mission, there's only one Kerbal for the job. Johnny Kerman. I know a couple of you were very disappointed in the last series where he didn't go on the first Juna mission. But trying to make up for that now. Here he is, amongst the first Kerbals to set foot on Ike. And you go for a quick jump as well. I want 3 for 3, so land this. Come on. There we go. And as our science officer, you can take a surface sample. The dark black soil has an almost crystalline structure. It's fun to play with. Well, enjoy. 240 science. Yes, please. Okay, so we've got a little bit of tidying up to do here. A few things we need to accomplish. So I think now it's probably best we return to the post commentary. With their fun and games on the surface complete, then it's time for our Kerbals to make their way back aboard the lander. Johnny Kerman goes first, followed by Kerdard, and then, last but not least, Bargel Kerman makes her way back aboard. We're not finished here just yet though, we still have a whole bunch of science experiments to perform, so we crack open that fully stocked science bay and we start taking readings. Now this really is a fully stocked science bay. It's designed so that we can get the maximum number of readings possible, if necessary, from high in the atmosphere, low in the atmosphere, and on the surface. But of course, Ike doesn't have an atmosphere. We've only got the one set that we can take. With that out of the way then, our Kerbal's mission is complete, and it's time for them to start making their way back to the Ptolemy. With Ike's low gravity, I did check, it is even lower than Kerbin's moon. It doesn't take us much to get off the ground, or indeed get ourselves a decent apoapsis. Once we've reached our zenith of 10,000 metres, we circularise our orbit, and now it's time for us to start planning our manoeuvres. We're not that far behind the Ptolemy in its orbit. In fact, I'd like to have been a bit further behind so we could have a chance to do a plane correction and all that, but we don't even have time to do that. Fortunately, I do just shuffle the manoeuvre about a bit, and we do get a good encounter right next to the ascending node there. Our burn is tiny, the Ptolemy is already pretty close by the time we make it, so we travel around the planet, we perform a couple more manoeuvres to get ourselves nice and close, and then we bring ourselves into dock. With the lander secured, we transfer that science data across from the lander's science bay to the experiment storage containers aboard the Ptolemy, and then it's time for one final time this episode to get Johnny out to do his thing. He grabs the science out of the lander's command pod, he resets the experiments that need resetting, he transfers the last of the science across to the Ptolemy, and then climbs back aboard the lander. And with that, our first mission down to the surface, and this episode, is complete. I hope you've enjoyed it. Next time, well, we haven't even used half the fuel on this lander, and we've got another full tank to refuel it from, so I expect there'll be at least one more excursion down to the surface, and as I mentioned earlier, at some point we do need to start bringing some of these missions home. My apologies once again for the sound quality. As I said, I will try to work to rectify that as soon as possible, but for now, thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you next time.